My friends, listen to me today. There is a lesson in life that many overlook. We are taught to be kind, to be giving, to be present for others. But if you give yourself away too freely, if you are always within reach, your value begins to fade in the eyes of those around you. Think about the most precious things in life. Gold is valuable because it is rare. Diamonds are precious because they are not found on every street corner. The same principle applies to you. When you are always there, always saying yes, always within reach, people stop appreciating your presence. Some of you are exhausted because you have stretched yourself too thin, thinking that by always being available, you are showing love. But let me tell you something. True love is not about saying yes to everything. True love is knowing when to step back, when to rest, when to let others learn to stand on their own. Even Jesus, the greatest leader to ever walk this earth, took time to be alone. He withdrew to pray. He stepped away from the crowds. He understood that to pour into others, you must first be filled. If the Son of God himself needed time apart, how much more do you and I? My friend, if you want to maintain your value, you must learn to set boundaries. Stop answering every call. Stop being at everyone's beck and call. Stop. Stop being at, when you respect your own time, others will begin to respect it too. When you make yourself too available to people, they start taking you for granted. It is a truth that is played out in relationships, friendships, workplaces, and even in families. Human nature tends to place more value on what is rare, what is hard to attain, and what requires effort to access. The things that come too easily are often overlooked, underappreciated, and even discarded. This principle applies to every area of life, including how people perceive and treat you when you are always within reach. Consider how we view precious stones like diamonds or gold. Their rarity makes them desirable. People are willing to spend fortunes just to obtain them because they understand that these treasures are not found in abundance. The same mindset exists when it comes to human relationships. When someone is always present, always saying yes, always available at any moment, their presence becomes expected rather than appreciated. The excitement and gratitude that should come with their presence diminish over time. When someone knows that you will always pick up the phone when they call, that you will always adjust your schedule to fit theirs, and that you will always prioritize them regardless of your own needs, they begin to assume it is their right rather than a privilege. The danger in this is that the more they assume, the less effort they put into valuing and respecting your time. Instead of appreciating your kindness and generosity, they start expecting it. What was once seen as a gift becomes an obligation in their minds. This does not mean that you should become distant or unavailable in a way that lacks love and compassion. Instead, it means that you must be intentional about how you give your time, energy, and attention. You must teach people to value your presence by not making it too common. If a person knows they can access you anytime without consideration, they will not feel the need to put in effort to maintain the relationship. Think about how people treat free things compared to things they must work for. When something is free, it is often taken for granted, it is easily discarded, easily replaced, and rarely appreciated. However, when something costs a price, people take care of it, protect it, and ensure they do not waste it. Your time and energy are no different. When you give them away too freely, people do not recognize their worth. This lesson applies not just to friendships and relationships, but also to professional life. In workplaces, employees who are always the first to volunteer, always the ones who stay late, always the ones who never say no, often find themselves overworked and their dedication is seen as expected rather than extraordinary. Meanwhile, those who set clear boundaries, who do not immediately say yes to every demand, and who make others respect their time, often gain more recognition and appreciation. Their time is seen as valuable because they have shown that it cannot be taken for granted. Even in leadership, those who make themselves too accessible lose their sense of authority and influence. A leader who is always available, always responding immediately, and always saying yes may initially seem like they are serving well. However, over time, their presence becomes ordinary rather than powerful. True leadership requires a balance between being available and being exclusive. When a leader knows when to step back, when to say no, and when to make their presence intentional rather than constant, their influence grows stronger. People listen more closely when they speak, and their presence carries greater weight. The same is true in personal relationships. Those who chase after others, who constantly check in, who always make themselves available regardless of how they are treated, often find themselves being ignored or taken advantage of. On the other hand, those who know their worth, who give their presence selectively, and who require others to put in effort to maintain the relationship are often the ones who are most respected and cherished. Many people fall into the trap of thinking that by being constantly available, they are proving their love and dedication. They believe that by always being present, they are strengthening relationships. However, the reality is that too much availability can lead to resentment, exhaustion, and a loss of self-respect. The healthiest relationships are those built on mutual effort, respect, and appreciation. To change this dynamic, one must learn to set boundaries. Saying no does not mean rejecting people. It means valuing oneself. It means understanding that time is a limited resource that should not be wasted on those who do not appreciate it. It means recognizing that being less available does not mean being less caring. It means being wise about where and how energy is invested. Those who respect themselves enough to limit their availability often find that others begin to respect them more. Instead of being taken for granted, their presence is valued. Instead of being expected, their time is appreciated. Instead of being seen as ordinary, they are seen as significant. Ultimately, the more accessible you are, the less you are valued. If you want people to appreciate your time, your presence, and your energy, you must first appreciate it yourself. When you set the standard for how you should be treated, others will follow. Time is one of the most precious gifts given to us. Unlike money, possessions, or status, time is the one thing that once spent can never be regained. Every second that passes is a moment of your life that will never return. Yet so many people treat their time as if it is unlimited, giving it away carelessly to people, distractions, and activities that do not add value to their lives. They waste it on things that do not serve their purpose, only to find themselves exhausted, unfulfilled, and wondering where the hours, days, and years have gone. When you do not recognize the value of your time, others will not recognize it either. If you allow people to take advantage of your availability, if you constantly say yes to every demand placed upon you, if you give away your time without considering whether it is being used wisely, you will soon find yourself depleted. You may feel like you are being helpful, that you are being selfless by always being there for others, but in reality, you are allowing yourself to be drained without receiving anything in return. The more you give your time without setting boundaries, the more people will expect it and the less they will appreciate it. Some people go through life thinking that they will always have more time. They put off their dreams, delay important decisions, and let days slip by as if they have an endless supply. But life has a way of reminding us that time is fleeting. The opportunities you miss today may not come back tomorrow. The moments you waste on meaningless distractions are moments you could have used to build something lasting, to invest in yourself, to strengthen your relationships, or to grow closer to God. It is only when time is lost that people truly realize how valuable it was. Imagine someone handing you a large sum of money and telling you that once it's gone, you can never get it back. Would you spend it recklessly? Would you throw it away on things that do not matter? Most people would be careful with it, making sure they use it wisely, but time is even more valuable than money, because money can be earned again, while time cannot. Yet many people do not treat their time with the same level of caution and respect. They waste hours scrolling through meaningless distractions, engaging in conversations that drain their energy, or saying yes to things they do not want to do, all because they have not learned to guard their time as they should. One of the biggest traps people fall into is thinking that being busy means they are using their time well. But busyness is not the same as productivity. Many people fill their schedules with endless tasks, running from one obligation to the next, without ever stopping to ask themselves if what they are doing is truly important. They mistake movement for progress, filling their days with activities that do not align with their purpose. But being constantly busy does not mean you are making the best use of your time. It only means that you are occupied. The question is, are you occupied with the right things? When you fail to take control of your time, others will take control of it for you. People will always have demands, expectations, and requests. If you do not set limits, you will find yourself constantly pulled in different directions, trying to please everyone but never feeling satisfied yourself. You may think that by always being available, you are showing love, but true love does not mean sacrificing yourself to the point of exhaustion. True love means giving your best, and you cannot give your best if you are constantly drained because you have not protected your time. There is a difference between giving your time with intention and allowing it to be taken without thought. When you give your time intentionally, you are choosing to invest in what matters most. You are prioritizing your well-being, your spiritual growth, your relationships, and your purpose. But when you let others dictate how you spend your time, you become a servant to their needs rather than a steward of your own life. You were not placed on this earth to simply exist and respond to everyone else's demands. You were placed here with a purpose, and if you do not guard your time, you will never fully walk in that purpose. Some of the most successful and fulfilled people in the world understand that time is their most valuable resource. They do not waste it on unnecessary distractions. They do not spend hours in meaningless conversations. They do not allow their schedules to be dictated by people who do not respect their time. Instead, they are intentional about where they invest their energy. They know when to say no. They know when to step away. They know that every moment is a gift, and they choose to use it wisely. If you do not take control of your time, you will look back and realize that much of your life was spent on things that did not matter. The conversations you had out of obligation, the time you wasted on things that did not fulfill you, the hours you gave to people who never appreciated them, none of these things will bring you joy in the end. What will bring you fulfillment is knowing that you spent your time in a way that aligned with your values, your faith, and your purpose. You must learn to treat your time as the precious gift that it is. You must learn to say no when necessary. You must learn to step away from things that do not serve your calling. Because when you give your time carelessly, you are not only losing minutes and hours, you are losing pieces of your life that you will never get back. Boundaries are essential to living a life of purpose, balance, and self-respect. Too often, people feel guilty for setting limits, believing that saying no is an act of selfishness. But the truth is, without boundaries, life becomes overwhelming, energy becomes depleted, and one's sense of worth begins to diminish. Boundaries are not about shutting people out or refusing to help others. They are about ensuring that your time, energy, and purpose are protected so that you can give your best to the world without losing yourself in the process. When boundaries are not in place, people will take as much as you are willing to give. Some do so intentionally, knowing they can manipulate your kindness, while others simply do it out of habit because they have never been told otherwise. When you constantly say yes to things that drain you, you are teaching people that your time and energy are always available, regardless of how it affects you. Over time, this leads to exhaustion, frustration, and even resentment. The more you stretch yourself beyond your limits, the less effective you become in the things that truly matter. Many people struggle with setting boundaries because they want to be seen as kind, dependable, or selfless. They fear that saying no will make them appear uncaring or difficult. But true kindness does not mean overextending yourself to the point of exhaustion. True kindness includes respecting yourself enough to know when to step back. A person who is constantly drained cannot truly serve others well. When you protect your well-being, you are in a much better position to offer genuine love, support, and care to those around you. Some people feel an obligation to say yes out of fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of rejection, fear of being perceived as unhelpful. But living in fear of what others will think is a trap that will keep you bound to a life that is not your own. Every time you say yes when you truly mean no, you are placing someone else's needs above your own in a way that is not sustainable. It is not an act of love to give more than you have the capacity to give. It is not an act of kindness to neglect yourself for the sake of pleasing others. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that your time and energy are valuable and that you will not allow them to be misused. It is a way of ensuring that you are able to fully show up in the areas of life that matter most. People who do not set boundaries often find themselves feeling overwhelmed and stretched thin, unable to fully enjoy their own lives because they are constantly catering to the demands of others. In relationships, a lack of boundaries can lead to imbalances where one person gives endlessly while the other takes without consideration. This dynamic is unhealthy and unsustainable. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, where both people understand the importance of honoring each other's time, energy, and well-being. When you establish clear boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. Those who truly value and respect you will honor your limits, while those who resist them may only have been interested in what they could take from you rather than in you as a person. In the workplace, boundaries are just as important. Many people find themselves overworked and underappreciated because they have never learned to say no. They take on extra tasks, work late hours, and push themselves beyond their limits in an attempt to be seen as hardworking and reliable. But constantly sacrificing your well-being for the sake of work does not lead to success. It leads to burnout. The most effective and respected professionals are those who understand the importance of balance. They know when to step up and take responsibility, but they also know when to set limits to protect their time and energy. It is also important to set boundaries with yourself. Not every opportunity, invitation, or demand on your time deserves your attention. Learning to discern what aligns with your purpose and what does not is a crucial skill. Every time you say yes to something that does not serve your growth, you are saying no to something that could. Every time you allow yourself to be pulled into distractions, unnecessary drama, or obligations that do not add value to your life, you are wasting energy that could be used for something meaningful. Boundaries are not just about protecting your time. They are also about protecting your peace. There will always be people who try to push past your limits, who make you feel guilty for not giving them more than you can afford to give. But you are not responsible for their expectations. You are responsible for your own well-being. When you establish and enforce boundaries, you send a message that you respect yourself and that you expect others to do the same. Many people feel guilty for setting boundaries because they have been conditioned to believe that saying yes is the only way to be a good person. But there is nothing noble about allowing yourself to be used, drained, or taken for granted. True generosity comes from a place of fullness, not from a place of depletion. If you want to be able to give your best to the world, you must first ensure that you are taking care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Boundaries allow you to focus on what truly matters. They help you prioritize your purpose, your goals, and your personal growth. They give you the freedom to say yes to the things that align with your values and no to the things that do not. When you establish boundaries, you create space for the things that bring you joy, fulfillment, and peace. You create a life that is not dictated by the expectations of others, but guided by your own sense of purpose and self-worth. Even the greatest leaders throughout history understood the importance of stepping away to refocus. And Jesus himself set the perfect example. Though he spent his days surrounded by people, teaching, healing, and performing miracles, he often withdrew to be alone. He understood that to continue giving, he needed to refuel. He knew that constant availability would lead to exhaustion, and he prioritized moments of solitude to reconnect with his purpose. If even Jesus, who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, needed time to step away and regain strength, then surely we too must learn to do the same. Many people today feel the pressure to always be available, to constantly give, to always be in motion. They equate busyness with productivity and accessibility with love. But the truth is, an empty vessel has nothing to pour out. No matter how strong, capable, or passionate a person is, there comes a point when their energy is depleted, and if they do not take time to refuel, they will burn out. There is no honor in running yourself into exhaustion. Constantly pouring into others without taking time to replenish yourself does not make you stronger. It makes you weaker over time. Jesus understood this, and that is why he made solitude a priority. Time and again, he withdrew to pray, to reflect, and to be with the Father. He did not wait until he was completely drained before stepping away. He recognized the importance of preventative rest, taking time alone before exhaustion set in. He knew that the demands of life, ministry, and people would never stop, but he also knew that if he did not care for himself, he would not be able to fully carry out his mission. There is a misconception that stepping away is selfish, that retreating from people means abandoning responsibilities. But in reality, stepping away is an act of wisdom. It is recognizing that to be your best, you must first take care of yourself. It is understanding that you cannot give your all if you are running on empty. Jesus was never in a rush, never overwhelmed by the demands of the crowds, because he knew when to step away and seek renewal. He was intentional about his time, choosing to retreat when necessary so that he could return with clarity, strength, and purpose. In today's world, distractions are everywhere. People are constantly pulled in multiple directions, answering calls, responding to messages, and juggling endless responsibilities. Many feel guilty at the thought of taking a break, believing that productivity means always doing something. But productivity without purpose is meaningless. You can be busy all day and still accomplish nothing of real value if you are operating from a place of exhaustion. True effectiveness comes not from doing more, but from doing what matters with focus and energy. That focus and energy can only come when you take the time to step away, just as Jesus did. Jesus' moments of solitude were not acts of isolation, but acts of preparation. He was not retreating to escape responsibility. He was retreating to strengthen himself so that he could fulfill his purpose. When he withdrew to pray in the mountains, to rest by the sea, or to spend time alone in the wilderness, he was setting an example for all of us. These moments were not wasted time. They were necessary for the work ahead. In the same way, when you take time for yourself, when you pull away to reflect, pray, and refuel, you are not being unproductive. You are preparing yourself to walk in your purpose with greater strength and clarity. When Jesus stepped away, he did not apologize for it. He did not explain himself to everyone or seek approval for taking time alone. He simply did what was necessary. Many people struggle with guilt when they take time for themselves because they worry about what others will think. They feel obligated to always be available, to always say yes, to always put others before themselves. But Jesus knew that constant availability was not sustainable. He set boundaries, and in doing so, he taught us that it is not only okay to step away, it is essential. Stepping away is not just about resting the body. It is about renewing the mind and spirit. It is about gaining perspective, resetting priorities, and coming back with fresh energy. When Jesus spent time alone, he often spent it in prayer, seeking direction and strength. He understood that his mission was too great to carry out on his own strength. He knew that true power comes not from constant movement, but from deep connection with the Father. When you take time to retreat, you are following his example. You are acknowledging that you cannot do everything on your own, that you need moments of rest to be able to serve effectively. It is in these moments of solitude that clarity comes. It is in stillness that purpose is reignited. It is in stepping away that you find the strength to return and continue your journey with renewed passion. Many people believe they do not have time to step away. They tell themselves that they are too busy, that there are too many responsibilities demanding their attention. But the truth is, if you do not make time to rest, your body and mind will eventually force you to. Burnout does not happen overnight. It happens when people ignore the warning signs, when they keep pushing through exhaustion instead of taking the time to refuel. Jesus did not wait until he was completely drained to withdraw. He made solitude a habit. He made renewal a priority. He understood that the demands of life would never stop, but that did not mean he had to be consumed by them. The world will always have expectations. There will always be more to do, more people to help, more work to be done, but you must learn to follow the example of Jesus. You must learn that stepping away is not a sign of weakness, but a source of strength. Just as Jesus took time alone to refuel, so should you. When you return, you will be stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the path ahead. When you are always available, people begin to take your presence for granted. The more accessible you are, the less impact you have, because familiarity can often lead to complacency. True influence does not come from being constantly present, but from the wisdom, power, and value you bring when you do show up. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and visionaries throughout history understood this principle. They knew that their presence carried more weight when it was intentional rather than routine. They understood that being everywhere all the time diminished their effectiveness. When you are always within reach, people assume they can call on you at any moment, and they stop valuing your time and input. If something is rare, people cherish it. If something is always available, people treat it as ordinary. This is why scarcity creates demand. It is why the most sought-after experts, leaders, and mentors are not those who are accessible 24/7, but those who are selective with their time. They understand that their influence is not tied to how frequently they show up, but to the impact they make when they do. Many people fall into the trap of thinking that being constantly available is the key to success. They believe that if they are always present, always responding, and always saying yes, they will be seen as valuable. But the opposite is true. When you overextend yourself, you become less effective. Your energy becomes scattered, your focus weakens, and your ability to inspire others diminishes. People respect those who set boundaries because it signals that their time is precious and that when they do give their attention, it is meaningful. If you look at the most influential figures in any field, whether in leadership, business, or personal development, you will notice that they are not always accessible. They are intentional with their presence. They do not dilute their impact by being everywhere at once. Instead, they choose when and where to show up so that when they do, their words and actions carry maximum weight. Their presence is powerful because it is not overused. Jesus himself demonstrated this principle. Though he had the ability to be with people at all times, he often withdrew. He did not heal every person in every town. He did not perform miracles on demand. Instead, he was strategic with his time, knowing that his influence was strongest when his presence was purposeful. When he did show up, lives were changed. People gathered in awe, not because he was always there, but because they knew that when he was present, something significant would happen. His impact came not from constant availability, but from the power of his presence when he chose to be there. In our personal and professional lives, we must learn to adopt the same wisdom. There is a difference between being available and being effective. The person who constantly says yes to every request, every meeting, and every obligation will eventually find themselves stretched thin, unable to give their best to anything. But the person who understands the power of selective presence will be able to deliver excellence when it matters most. If you make yourself too available, people will assume that your time is not valuable. They will interrupt you with trivial matters, expecting you to drop everything at a moment's notice. But when you establish clear boundaries and show that your time is valuable, people begin to respect it. They begin to recognize that when you do offer your time and attention, it is something significant. Think about the difference between a priceless artifact in a museum and an everyday object you see all the time. The artifact is rare, unique, and valuable precisely because it is not something you encounter every day. It is protected, displayed with care, and treated with respect. Meanwhile, the ordinary object that is always within reach is often overlooked and underappreciated. The same applies to people. When you position yourself as constantly available, you become ordinary in the eyes of others. But when you are intentional about when and how you engage, you become someone whose presence commands respect. This is not about being distant or unapproachable. It is about recognizing that your influence is strongest when your presence is purposeful. People are more likely to listen to your words when they do not hear them all the time. They are more likely to value your advice when it is given selectively rather than endlessly. The more intentional you are with your presence, the greater the impact you will have. Some of the most powerful figures in history were not those who were always seen, but those who showed up at the right time with the right message. Their presence had weight because it was not overused. If you want to be a person of influence, you must learn to resist the urge to be everywhere at once. You must learn that saying no to constant availability does not make you less valuable. It makes you more impactful. The world is filled with noise, distractions, and endless demands for attention. If you allow yourself to be consumed by the need to always be present, you will dilute your ability to make a real difference. But if you choose to show up with wisdom, bringing clarity, strength, and purpose when you do, your presence will carry far more meaning. Your value does not come from how often you are seen, but from the significance of what you bring when you are present. True influence is not measured by constant accessibility, but by the wisdom, power, and purpose you carry when you do show up. I challenge you today, step back where you have been too present. Take a moment to renew yourself, because when you return, you will not just be there, you will be a force, an influence, and a presence that carries power. God bless you.